First, senior White House correspondent Jacqui Heinrich is in Edinburgh, Scotland. Jacqui.
Harris, President Trump said he's going to make this announcement tonight or tomorrow, that Putin has 10 or 12 days to get this done. But he already effectively sent that message, telling reporters who were in the meeting with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer that there's just no sense in giving Putin the full 50 days because he already knows what the end result's going to be at the end of that timeline.
I'm disappointed in President Putin, very disappointed in him. So we're going to have to look, and I'm going to reduce that 50 days that I gave him to a lesser number because I think I already know the answer what's going to happen.
Trump said the consequence if Russia does not agree to a deal will be sanctions and maybe secondary sanctions on countries doing business with Russia. That would have big impacts for major purchasers of Russian oil like China, India, and Brazil. And President Trump also revealed something that Putin won't be getting and why.
He wants to do trade deals with us. He talks about it all the time. He wanted to. And I envision that a lot of trade with Russia. They have a lot of valuable things. When you talk about rare earth, they have serious rare earth, right? It doesn't make sense to me. I thought he would want to end this thing quickly. I really felt it was going to end. But every time I think it's going to end, he kills people.
This was about as downcast as we have seen President Trump when it comes to his dealings with Putin. And he said that he doesn't want to have to hit Russia with sanctions and that he loves the Russian people. But he acknowledged that Putin has been saying the things that he wants to hear and then doing the opposite. He also acknowledged his own belief that he'll be able to get this thing to an end might be dimming because he doesn't understand what Putin's doing here and his mindset. But he did leave open the chance that maybe a deal still comes together within that 10 or 12 days. Just maybe.
You know, Jacqui, it's interesting. This isn't the first time in recent days that we've heard the president talk about those phone calls. And in one, he referenced the first lady, and he said, then she told me, you know, that another building had been hit in Ukraine, and I knew that everything Putin had just said wasn't true. So all of this now seems to have a ramping up effect. We'll get into it with my first guest. Good to see you. Thank you. Steve Moore, former Trump economic advisor. So, Steve, you just heard me saying that this seems to have a ramp up. Talk to me about Russia. I want to know what the president of the United States is about to do to Russia and how that's going to hurt their economy and how fast.
Harris, great to be with you. What Trump is doing with respect to these foreign policy moves is exactly what he has done so successfully with trade deals. He is exerting America's muscle and flexing our muscle and forcing countries to do things that are in America's interest and in the interest of the whole world. So the situation with Russia is very simple when it comes to their economy, Harris. Their entire economy is dependent on selling their oil and gas, and it's also dependent on being able to sell things to the United States in our $20 trillion consumer market. And Trump is saying, look, you're going to lose access to that. We are going to keep out your oil and gas in ways that will really hurt their economy. And I believe this will be a successful strategy. In other words, I think he's going to drag Vladimir Putin to the negotiating table, just as he's done with trade, and say, stop and desist in Ukraine. Let's get a peace deal.
Look, I'm just going to be plain speaking. That's going to be really dependent on whether or not our so-called friends in Europe are no longer duplicitous when it comes to buying Russian oil. Come on, let's get real. We know that they have been doing that.
That's true.
What kind? Yeah, the president's going to have to put pressure on that part, too.
Except, can I just add one thing to that, Harris? You're exactly right, but there's something else we can do that Trump is already doing, but he can turn the spigots on here in the United States.
There you go.
Every time we produce an additional barrel of oil here in the United States or more natural gas, who do you think is hurt the most by that? Russia is.
Yeah, and in interviewing the Secretary of Energy, Chris Wright, who the president has chosen to lead that, come on, let's get us into our independence zone again. Let's get there again. We're seeing some movement. So, all right, so let's move to this. President Trump also addressed that major trade deal with the European Union. Let's watch.
I want to focus on the deal we just made with the European Union, which is the biggest trade deal in history. We've made the big ones. We just finished Indonesia. They opened up their country. We just finished Japan. They opened up their country. Philippines, we just finished. They opened up their country. They were very closed. I'd love to see China open up their country. So we're dealing with China right now as we speak. Yeah, we're dealing with China right now.
Well, all of this comes as revenue from the president's tariffs is surging. In June alone, the U.S. collected more than $27 billion. Look, I don't know what kind of reporting can really skip this, but in some avenues, as you know, in legacy and liberal media, they will skip this. This is a big deal.
A big deal indeed, and as you know, I've been kind of a skeptic of this approach.
I do,
because I don't like tariffs. But I have to say, I mean, you look at what Trump has done. One country after another, whether it's Canada, whether it's Japan, Korea, China. Well, I want to see the fine print on the China deal because I don't trust the Chinese. But now, if you get the big plum here, which is the European Union, I would have thought that this would have been the toughest one to get because the Europeans are protectionist. They discriminate against American technology products. They discriminate against our agricultural products, our automobiles. So this is huge for American workers and the American economy. Now, again, I want to see the deal. I want to see the fine print because I don't know whether these countries will actually, they'll agree to the deal, but whether they will actually. Follow through with it, we will see. But this is incidentally, this is freer and fairer trade. I'm a free trade guy. What Trump is doing is leveraging down all the tariffs around the world. That's a great outcome for everyone.
Look, I want to get to this. It's already been a big 6 months, we know. It's only Monday, and it's shaping up to be a good week for the economy under President Trump. We have trade deals, that major tariff revenue that I just mentioned, $27 billion. His big, beautiful law, as I call it, that has now been putting spending changes and tax cuts, trillions of dollars of investments into the U.S. economy and decreasing gas prices and increasing retail sales. Look, the vice president, J.D. Vance, is in Canton, Ohio, talking about this right now. Let's watch just from moments ago.
Yeah. It is so simple. You need a government that works for you for a change. You need a government that makes it easier for your employers and for yourselves to invest and build wealth right here in the United States of America. You need a government that makes your life easier and not harder, and that's what the Trump administration is committed to doing every single day. The big, beautiful bill includes billions and billions of dollars to secure our border, to deport those criminal migrants, and to allow the United States to take control of its country once again and kick those drug cartels the hell out of the United States of America.
All right, that was moments ago. And Steve, this is important. The Vice President of the United States, the President of the Senate, that the place where the big, beautiful bill became law ending up on the president's desk. It's important for the American people to hear this. Why? Steve Moore, are you there?
Oh, sorry. Look, yeah, sorry about that. So, yes, absolutely. I mean, are you getting tired of winning, Harris? I mean, this is a phenomenal set of achievements in 6 months. You've got the deregulation that saved $1 trillion for the American economy. I didn't think Donald Trump would be able to get this big, beautiful bill done in 6 months by July 4th. I was wrong. He did. You're seeing the trade deals. You're seeing the pro-America energy policies. And incidentally, these are not really, these are just common sense. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, Liberal, Conservative. Who could be against these things? Who's against producing more energy? Who's against cutting taxes?
That's why it's so hard to get done. Hey, look, I want to throw this in there. The President's Department of Government Efficiency also just updated its website to show an estimated total savings of $199 billion. That's more than the $1,200 more than $1,200 per taxpayer. So this is now compounding in a very positive way in the economy. I would be remiss if I didn't just get a quick checkup on where the economy is right now, because there are a lot of naysayers out there, people screaming recession, all of it. Drill it down with what we know on this Monday.
I'm super bullish. I think that I've rarely been more confident in the economy. And by the way, you don't have to take my word for that, Harris. Look at the polls of small businesses. Look at the polls of corporate CEOs. Look at the polls of consumers. They're all feeling much better about the economy. It is really looking like a good situation. The one thing we're all a little worried about is the size of our debt and our deficits. So you got to get control of government spending. That's the one thing we haven't done yet. But the rest of the picture looks big and beautiful.
Yeah, and you think that those polls are reflective of what people are feeling? Because remember, under the Biden administration, it was a dour situation, and Biden's White House kept telling them that they were imagining things, all of those millions of voters out there. Real quick, your last word on what they're feeling.
It's a good time to invest in America, folks. I mean, the market's up a lot, but I think there's a big upside to these policies. They're all pro-America, pro-American businesses, and pro-investor. I've waited a long time for this, Harris, so I can't take the smile off my face.
Steve Moore, thank you very much for your time. Always good to see you.
You too.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kayleigh McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.